Welcome to UberCube. This is your host, Anthony Adams, aka Uber Bear, and today we are yet again joined by the godfather of Cube, Stu.
What?
Hi, Usman.
You might not have known this.
Hello.
Okay, it was my idea. Okay, I've kept a low profile for all these years, but I did create the idea.
You're like Basky. You know, the whole time Stu's been the Basky.
I've
been running around like.
This is true.
Yeah,
Stu is secretly your Ghost Rider.
Yeah. He invented Cube.
Yeah.
What age did Cube first come to you, Stu?
Around the age of 6.
Yeah.
I was out riding my little chopper bicycle and, going up to play soccer at the local park. And I thought, you know what? Even though magic hasn't been invented yet, you know what would be the greatest idea? Was that if we ignored the restrictions that this conglomerate organization that only cares about capitalism, and we create our own identity within this product to use it as a way to express ourselves in the most meaningful way possible.
It makes total sense. All right, so
I was very prophetic for 6 years of age.
Before we proceed, we're going to have our drinks of the show. We're going to start out with, we're short timing here because we're all tired, and I think I'm going to go to the movies.
Cider.
Bold Rock, hard cider. I'm having apple. What do you
Cider.
got? Apple. All right, cool. May, what do you got? Same tea? Cool. Pollen in it? Yes? All right, cool. Usman, you got water? All right, all right, cool.
It's running low.
High quality H2O. All right, cool. All right.
He's like, I just got here and I already want to leave.
So I actually have something. So our last episode we did together, it was fun. It was lighthearted. I'm going to get more heavy now. Let's go. All right. So, Usman, question.
Hello.
Who do you build a cube for and why?
I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. Like, I feel like, so I'm in kind of a weird position, like, with at least my main cube, because it's like, I mainly want to represent, like, evaluations for other people. So it's like, but it's also a bit ego. So it's like, I want to do it for myself too. So I would say probably like, but I would say a lot of other cubes, it's mainly like myself. I would say like for other people too to draft. But I think at the end of the day, it's a lot of it is just kind of like proving to myself, just like XYZ. I guess what I'm proving is different depending on the cube. But I would say, yeah, probably myself. It sounds a little egotistical because it is.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Can I
Actually,
pose
well, before you do,
I'll pose a
this
question back
conversation.
to you
This
as well.
conversation came out last night. Your question goes.
Okay.
Your answer aligns with a lot of people's. So when you say it feels egotistical, well, hello, brother. It's the same for us too. All right, Stu, question.
Okay. Well, comment/question. I am a big competition guy, right? I've talked about this in the past. I love competition. I love sports in general, regular sports, esports, whatever. One thing that's common for any commentary about a high-level professional athlete is that you are built differently in the way that you have to have an unbelievable ego about your ability in order to become wildly successful. And you can talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, you could talk about Tom Brady, you could talk about Conor McDavid, you could talk about
Rocky Balboa,
exactly. You could talk about any elite athlete. And the one thing that
Larry Bird,
Michael Jordan, whatever. The one thing that will certainly connect them all is this ego that not only am I good, but I have the ability to be the best, not just the best version of myself, but achieve a level that puts me above most other people. And I feel like as a cube curator, you're almost putting yourself in that position because you're not just showing up to a commander night where you're sitting down and playing a deck with 3 other people who get to express themselves with their own deck. You're not just showing up to a 60-card tournament where you can show up with a modern deck and there's a bunch of other people with their modern decks. You're showing up saying, hey, you, don't do what you may have planned to do today. Do what I am telling you to do. Do my creation. Do my experience. Because I believe that my experience is at least, at worst, maybe on a par with your commander knight or or whatever, but is in fact going to be better than whatever experience that you may have either planned for or expected when you came to this store or my house or whatever. And I feel like it's that level of ego that drives a person to either be a good athlete, a good cube curator. You could put, name any category, but it has to be there, right? And I feel like that's a good thing because you're exposing yourself.
It would have
you're
never
making,
had developed had not the
it
ego
wouldn't.
inserted itself.
It wouldn't. You wouldn't have the. Would you have the bravery to make that statement? I don't think you would.
When you first built the fake cube, who'd you build it for? Question mark. Simple. Try to remember back then. Who was it for? The best way you can answer.
I built it for myself.
Yep. That's back to Usman. Yep.
Granted, I make changes for other people, right? I make changes so that way the play experience is like better. But the initial idea for the cube, I built for myself because I had a list of a bunch of showcase cards and a bunch of like miscellaneous cool aesthetic cards and cool flavor that I wanted to have a home for.
Usman, to carry that question forward, when you were talking about your cube is meant to be, I know you love the word signpost, but we're going to call it a signpost or a flare in the sky or whatever you need for other people to kind of follow your ideas. You're testing, you're piloting, you're trying out new cards, right? You're pioneering, whatever words you want to find. You're going into the wilderness with something new. You're also writing articles that complement a lot of your ideas and exchanges, right? My question for you is, at what point has your cube, do you feel like you still have the reins? Is it still your cube? The fact that you developed it from the get, right? That was your initial thought. You had the brainchild for developing your cube. At what point has it become for the masses or crowdsourced? Have you felt like the whole time you've been able to keep it centered on what you desire or what you want out of the cube experience?
It's funny, like, I forget when, it was about a year ago, I wrote an article called "The Cube is Bigger Than You." Yeah, it was about a year ago. Wow. It had kind of inspired by, like, I'm on the committee for the Pauper Cube, or the official Pauper Cube, in quotes. And, you know, we decided to put in the cards from the Pioneer Masters set, which were, like, the downgrades. And it was Pioneer Masters, so it was all online, and it was Arena. And a lot of people did not like it. And at first, I was just like, okay, whatever. And then was just like, saw the pushback and saw some people like not really liking it. And then had this realization, which was a quote that had kind of burrowed its way into my skull, of "the cube is bigger than you." And I would say that kind of applies to how I tend to view maintaining a cube. And I guess that's kind of like the way it is also with just like, you know, just like doing a cube and then just like having certain things or not having certain things, or just like agency of just like how archetypes are, even if they aren't necessarily too good, just like how the agency it is to play against them and how like terrible it can feel like having counterplay. So I'd say like that kind of also has been kind of a way in terms of just like other people's input or just looking at other people. But I would say like May said, I think the impetus to design a cube was something about just like wanting to prove to myself, especially like back in the early days, of just like how I would do it. But even other cube ideas, which I've had, like, I have an idea, I haven't built it in person, but I built it online, of just like this cube I would build in 2010. Like if I was to do it now, how I would build it then. At the end of the day, a lot of it's just like proving to myself and just like proving to others like what it would look like if I, you know, had that idea.
Can I ask an example? And the reason why I say that is because Anthony and I have been quite vocal. We have our good friend Samich in our group, who is, you know, pretty well regarded, highly regarded in the Pauper and Peasant. I'd just like to know an example of a card and the reasoning.
If you're going to talk about Mother of Runes, he put it back in.
No, I'm not going to talk about Mother of Runes.
He already put it back in.
I'm not going to.
It's done.
But that has been, you know, and that's one specific card that's been a point of contention. But I'm interested to know what was, like, even just one or two specifics, and was there a common theme as to why someone or some group said you need to add this, you need to remove it, and how that kind of conflicted with your original philosophy?
Yeah, so like an example I can think of is Othari, which is like a red and a white for a 3/3 that like when it attacks it makes a rebel or something.
Yeah.
And overall, it was performing fine. Like, it didn't really seem oppressive, but like I'd heard from several drafters, it's like, this card is miserable to play against. I'm like, yeah, I think that was also that way with either Gut or Broadside Bombardiers, which I was like, it became kind of like a utility kind of thing where it's just like, does my environment need this? And the answer is almost always no. And this was like, would the format be improved by this not being there? And I was like, yeah. And also, I didn't really care myself. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to really miss this card. Like, I don't really care. Like, of course, there's like a bunch of busted 3-mana red cards. So, like, what's the worst that's going to happen because one of them's gone? So I was just like, yeah, sure. And that whole like the cube is bigger than you kind of just like, that was in my mind too. Just like looking at stuff like that, I was just like, yeah, it made it a better experience for everybody involved. So
I want
yeah.
to ask you a specific question. We're going to focus on Vintage Cube for a minute. How does a designer, we're going to call them that, remove themselves from like and I'm going to use these words, groupthink, this like populist driven cube, because that is what it can become, right? Like whatever some certain personalities or certain, I guess, internet or whatever YouTube personalities tell them they're supposed to put in the cube, they put in the cube. How does that type of person continue to keep some kind of identity that feels like that cube is their inspiration when it's such a, I guess, en masse looked at cube, right? You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, how do you maintain personality within a cube, keep it grounded, feel like it's your inspiration and represents you? And you kind of said that a minute ago when you cut like broadside bombardiers, these things. What advice would you give to a person who's maintaining a cube that's of the peaks of power, we'll call it that, but in order to keep it grounded so it feels like it's still, they have ownership of the idea? Usman.
But I think part of it is just like I feel like sometimes when looking at power motivated environments, there's a idea that there isn't a lot of space for personalization or thinking outside the box. Like sometimes you'll see that happen sometimes where it's just like, oh, like you can make a lot of variation, but like in a power cube or something like that you can't. It's a very boilerplate, like very like a condensed version of that verbiage. But I think there still is a lot of personality that you can have, even just like even if I was to look at lands, for example, like, just like the land distribution you can have in your cube, even if it's like power motivated, there are different like levers that you can pull, like, just like, do I want to have like surveil lands or something? And it's not always just like, if I want to have a power motivated, I need to have XYZ. It's not always that way. It's still a lot of nuance in the ability to build within.
So, May, follow-up question to that. With the Fey Cube, and you are on the first page of Cube Cobra, and I'm going to do a little bit of you guys got to help me navigate this. As in, there is a degree of when someone clicks on Cube Cobra and they want to look at most popular cubes, and the Fey Cube does populate up there, it does create like a. I'm trying to navigate this the best I can to not sound derogatory. I'm trying to find the words. It's intended to be good, but like it says, this is the iconic version of this cube, right? And how do you now represent that cube as a designer and then still get people to kind of follow along and feel like they can kind of break out, do their own thing, and not follow this, I guess, perfect construct of the Fey Cube, and being imperfect as it is, right? How do you stay humble in this idea and then encourage other people to copy, clone, modify, want them to do that? You see where I'm going with this question in the weirdest way because of the popularity of said cube?
I guess I don't really understand what your question is. Like, is it like how having a popular cube like affects like my relationship with the cube?
Yes. 100%.
Okay.
As in add, don't add. I must look this way, right? You can call it prestige for the sake of calling that, but it's not.
In my particular case, and I'm sure, I don't know if Usman has felt the same about some of their own cubes, but for the Fey Cube in particular, it was not a cube that was ever intended to be popular, but ever since that it did, there's a certain amount of caution and delicate approaches that I now have to take for the Fey Cube, because now there's considerations, because most of the interactions that I get from the Fey Cube are people drafting it, people following it, people drafting it, or people cloning it, right? And between those three things, I'm having to consider how are the people, like, why do people follow the cube? It could be for any particular reasons. Either they like the overview or they like the aesthetics or whatever. why they keep drafting it, even like if I have no involvement with those drafts or etc., is because they care a lot about like the mechanics, the environment, and etc. And having to keep that in mind is important. And then why do people clone it? Well, it's because it's accessible. It's very budget friendly. It's low enough power to be interesting, but high enough power to allow you to feel like you're kind of doing powerful things within the environment. I would think that the big way that it's changed my relationship with the cube, where before my idealized cube for this was just kind of like a little showcase of like a bunch of like the miscellaneous like Eldraine Adventure cards, a bunch of cool like Lorwyn and Shadowmoor cards that I particularly like. And it became a different kind of showcase in a way, because a lot less of the let's say original aesthetics and ideas really retained for the sake of gameplay, for the sake of functionality, for the sake of budget. And having to keep that in mind, because like at any point people are going to be looking for my updates for considerations for their clones, or moving forward people are going to like use that as a base of whether or not they're going to clone this cube, right? And having like some odd like $10 card, like what ended up happening with I think it was called Tangle, where it was I used to have like a Turbo Fog package that existed in the Fate Cube, and Tangle, I'm pretty sure it's Tangle, was one of those cards that existed as part of that. But over time, people just didn't really connect with the Turbo Fog in the way that I would have liked. And it ended up like a $10 card, so I ended up scrapping the entire package, right? But ultimately, even if that did retain as part of one of the core archetypes of this environment, it's one of those things that I couldn't really justify nowadays because it's just an expensive card. Those are things I didn't have to think about before.
Back to my original question, when you the first conceit of the cube, and Usman and May, I'll direct this back to you again. Who did you build these cubes for? Short answer.
Myself.
Yeah, myself. It's the reason I think partly like there's some kind of cubes I built, like when I built my first Pauper cube, or not first, I built my Pauper cube. It was just like, I can just do better than like some of the lists I'd seen online. And I was just like, yeah, I can just do better. And like that's, I mean, it's valid. It's sometimes it's an impetus to design. And yeah, that's,
do you think
one of them.
That there is like a corollary to the idea of the cube, or the idea, not necessarily the cube, we'll say the Fate cube, and then you're writing. Is there a corollary to the popularity of people reading it and the pressures that you feel? Is there ever like a runaway train, never coming back, little soul asylum? But you get the idea. Is like what I'm saying is, at what point is the cube starting to come out of your grasp, being driven by a popular type of a thesis from another group, that they're telling you what they want to see in your cube? Do you feel like that's something that you're open? I know everybody says they're open to it, but at what point is your art becoming like an overarching art for the rest,
like a group project?
A group project where it wasn't a group project. You both said you built your cubes for yourself, for you, for your own personal challenges. But then you turned them loose into the world. People liked them. You got the feedback. You do the feedback loops, all these things you do. And then how do you maintain this control, the keys to the idea of this was for you? Does it continue to be for you? Question for May and Usman.
Yeah, I think it's just striking that balance. And it's just like, I never really thought of it in that way, but it's like probably just realizing that it's like, I think ultimately I'm like, I have ultimate like kind of dictatorial, like I'm just going to,
Hang on. Sue has something he wants to say.
No, I don't.
This is your dick and this is my tatership.
Oh, yes. This is not a democracy.
Like,
I am a dick, and this is my tatership. Okay?
Yeah. I think that's part of it. Yeah. It's just like, ultimately I have, kind of final say, but I don't want it to be like where it's something that people don't enjoy. And sometimes it's a thing where it's just like people don't tell you. It's like the adage, like sometimes you'll hear like from a restaurant, it's like, if, people leave, they won't, like for every one person that tells you like 10 people won't, they'll just quietly leave.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like something like that, where it's just like people may not necessarily be that vocal with like stuff they don't like, but it's like yeah, I didn't like that. Just like you cut that card and then it's like, yeah, I never liked that card anyway. You hear from somebody else or something, or not necessarily a sour grapes, so it's like that's what they were actually thinking. But I don't know, like I try to keep a vibe because it's ultimately you can't have a cube that's just in isolation. Like it needs to have at least take its audience, whatever its intended audience is, like into some kind of account. Like I think part of it is, there's like the critical mass of people to draft it is part of it. And it's like maybe like popularity of like, people following it. Personally, I don't care. Like I don't really update
Nor
my
do
cubes
I.
online. Like I don't really care like anymore. It's just like, oh, I'm not on like the front page of Cube Cobra or something. It's like I don't care. Like if you want to follow it, every time somebody like follows one of my cubes or like copies them, I'm like, why'd you do? Why are you following?
Mistakes were
There's
made.
35,000 cards. Make your own cube, damn it.
It's like, are you lost?
Yeah.
I actually do agree with you, though, and I feel like I can expand that a little further. A little fun fact about me is that I actually went to college for graphic design, web design, etc. And a big part of like that main tertiary concept that I was putting together, where it was like, here's my web design, app design, and graphic design, right? One of the things I learned in graphic design was that you have to learn who you're marketing to. Who is this for?
Mhm.
Like, yes, when we start off with the who did we make it for, we made it for ourselves, right? We made it because this cube didn't exist before we decided to do it. Nobody else was going to make the fake cube in the same way that I wanted to portray the fake cube, right? In the same way that Usman's Popper Cube was done in a way that was unique to Usman. And it's an important context that you work through when you realize that while, yes, we made it for ourselves, we continue to improve it or put it out for other people. And the people who gravitate to that are people who kind of like understand and appreciate the vision, right? It feels like that we're kind of designing for our target market because we're trying to have people to enjoy it.
Can I even
Right.
take it a step further as well? My
Sure.
wife is an artist. She's a photographer. And she has definitely spent the last few months really developing the business side. She's a very, very talented photographer, got all the gear, got all the capabilities, the technical side, all that kind of stuff. But she's been focusing a lot on the business side of things recently, right? So I kind of adjacent that to the whole cube thing. And so you think about it from a business perspective, right? Some businesses just want to appeal to everybody, right? If you're McDonald's, you just want everybody to come in and eat a cheeseburger and fries, all right? Sorry, vegans or vegetarians, but you still want everyone to come in and have a hamburger and fries, right? It's definitely not the same for her and for her business. And actually, what she's been told essentially by other business owners and people in the same field is not only do you want to promote your business, but you do want to kind of push away the people that you don't want to the unworthy. I don't want to say unworthy, but the clients that you don't really want. If that kind of makes any sense, right? And
It's business growth.
it's business growth, but
Yeah.
it's the right business growth
Yeah.
as well, right? So similarly, from a Q perspective, you might think, okay, I'm going to design this with, and I don't want this to be elitist in any way, but you certainly do have an idea of how you want the cube to play. So, and I'll make this simple, a very, very highly technical cube, right? That you might want to design, very combo oriented, very synergistic, all that kind of stuff. Someone who's new to Magic might come along and play that and be like, this cube is trash. I'm getting 0-3 every time I play. I can't figure it out. And it's hard to turn around to someone and say, you know what? Maybe you're just not good enough to really take advantage or understand this cube. And it feels crappy to kind of say that, but you weren't the target market for this environment, right? I had this in mind when I built this. I wanted it to be really a test for an advanced player. Similarly, for something like you're building a very aggressive cube that's very easily like turn creature sideways, that's a bit more for everybody, the market's a lot more open.
Sure. But I'm going to hit you with a little bit of wisdom here. You can be as sweet as a peach, but some people just don't like peaches. Right?
Yeah.
Yep, I remember that quote. I liked it.
If you spend your entire life trying to appeal to everybody, then you're going to lose the people that you initially captured the hearts of.
And I like the peach, but I also like this, okay? And that is the truth.
Yeah.
And you know what the truth is like? The truth is like poetry.
It's an onion.
And people hate poetry.
I love poetry. A Road Not Taken by Robert Frost is like one. A Raisin in the Sun is the greatest piece of all time. But.
Listen, but that's just maybe the truth from time to time. That you have this cube that is developed by you for you. Maybe you've got a play group in mind. Maybe you've got a certain standard of player in mind, a certain aesthetic in mind. It's not going to vibe with everybody. It might be outside. I will guarantee that this cube, your artifact cube, I will say I have improved on it over the years. It's now one of your older cubes. When I first played that cube the first couple of times, it was
a slaughter fest.
I was getting slaughtered. As I've improved as a player, now I feel much more comfortable.
I once had somebody complain that the fake cube had too many flying and fairies and etc.
They're wrong.
The fake
baseline wrong.
That's like to be best. Fair, yes, they are entirely wrong. But they're just like, well, I wanted to dirtle with my nice little creatures, and I couldn't do that because there were fairies always pressuring me. And it's just like,
well,
it is the fake cube.
It's called the fake cube.
I did that for a reason.
Of course, there's going to be fairies.
Usman,
right?
give us some closing wisdom.
They were never going to be my target audience, anyways.
Yeah. I can't beat the Peach quote. Like, I think that's I can't really beat that. Like, I do think it's important to realize your target audience, and like sometimes that does dictate like what you realistically can or can't do. But sometimes it's just about like not forgetting who you are and just like what drove you to create it in the first place, or just like it's like a band. To kind of tie back to a previous episode, it's like a band
Path
that has
Peace.
been around for like, just like 30 years or something. It's been around. It's like their sound may have completely changed, but like they may not have forgotten, or hopefully they haven't. Yeah, Metallica.
Loaded.
I like Load and I like Reload. All right, I don't care. Haters aside, or if we will, for me, faters aside. I like Load and I like Reload. I think there's some great songs on there. I know that a lot of the Metallica like purists, like Black Album, Master of Puppets, kind of sort of poo-poo them as like not real Metallica or whatever. But I think they've got some great songs that are wonderful on their own merit. So I try not to be. I'm not a yucker of yums, if you will. But sometimes just turn the ego down a second.
And speaking of peaches, I'm from Savannah, Georgia, born and raised.
Millions of peaches?
So, Savannah's known for peaches.
Peaches for me?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm sweet. 5-star reviews on Spotify would be great. All right, Usman, wisdom.
He just gave his wisdom. That's the wisdom right there.
I gave my wisdom.
Yeah, you might be sweet as a peach, but this peach ain't for you.
All that fun stuff.
Read that.
All right, we're off
to the
socials.
All right, as always, if you want to get in on the discussion, Anthony, what are we looking at on the facebook.com/groups/MTG Cube group?
Over 1,400 now. Since
1,400?
It's every week.
As always, to our Patreons, to David Wilsey, to Chris Fitzgerald, Timber Dragon, Brian Christensen, Keaton Schultz, Lord Justice, Preston, Sam McKenna, and Jeff Stumpo. Huge thanks to all of you guys for the ongoing support, helping us keep the lights on here at UberCube. If you want to get in on the conversation, hit us up at Bluesky, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social, or at Twitter at ubercubemtgpod. Follow us on YouTube, UberCubeMTG Podcast 747. If you got a longer question or comment about this episode or anything else, Cube in general, hit us up, ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. Again, big thanks to all of our patrons, patreon.com/ubercube. Much love.
Happy cubing.